Good evening. First off, apologies that I wasn't there for you on Friday afternoon. Fate intervened, and you didn't want to see me trying to cook in that state. So, I am here tonight. For those of you that have already tried the recipe, I hope it went well. You might find this video still worth watching. There is a few hints, tips, alterations to the recipe, changes, little things that maybe boost the flavour a little bit, because what we've got in the recipe is the simplest version of it that I could think of. Designed to be kind of cooked from start to finish, again, like the meatballs, in 40 minutes, so you get a nice meal on the table from scratch quickly. So, without any further ado, I will get started. Obviously, you can, if you've got any questions, not quite sure how that's going to work now because we had the live chat with the questions, but presumably you can post questions on some sort of forum within the Bamwell Parish Council's web pages or something like that. We'll pick them up and answer them. So, kick off then, we'll start. I've turned my oven on to 170, that's on, preheating. Now I'm going to start with chicken. As the recipe says, we're just going to do 3 little diagonal cuts across each thigh. And there is a reason for that, which is perhaps not as obvious the way we're doing this recipe. In that, if you have the time and you want to do it, if you prepare the sauce in advance and marinate the chicken overnight or for a few hours in the sauce, it makes a big difference. The chicken absorbs the flavours and just gives it a bit of another level. I haven't done that on this one because I couldn't really say, let's go and do the marinade and then you can go away for 24 hours and I'll see you tomorrow, because that's not how it was working, and anyway I was ill so I wasn't available. And also because this was the quick version that I wanted to show you. But you can marinate it overnight or for a few hours and then roast the chicken off from there. I'm not going to do that today, but that's one thing you can do. So just quickly salt the chicken thighs. And those are in the oven. Like the recipe says, roughly 30 to 35 minutes, depending on the size of your chicken thighs. We will test them so that we know whether they're cooked, but that's the rough timeline you're looking at. So what we want to get on to next is making up the marinade or the sauce. So we're going to start by doing the coconut. Got a kettle of water pre-boiled over here. I'll just briefly disappear and come back to you. I think Liz got you coconut milk, which means you're a step ahead of me. You've got a tin that's already made up, you don't have to worry about it. I'm not sure it makes an awful lot of difference one way or the other. Coconut milk is easier to work with, I guess, quicker.
I think it's runnier. Don't think it thickens like the cream.
There you go. I use cream coconut, and it thickens well on the whole when you're making the sauce. Possibly slightly more coconutty, don't know. So using the cream coconut, I'm just going to chop this up because that will help it dissolve a bit quicker. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice I've committed a cardinal sin. I didn't wash my knife after I scored the chicken, which is one of the 7 sins of cooking, really, especially when you're working with chicken. I'm not going to worry about it too much. on this occasion because that's all going to be boiled up. And if there were any cross-contamination, we'd get rid of it like that. But you do have to be very careful when you're working with chicken. So then we want to add, I think it's 300 ml of boiling water, is it not? Yeah. Okay. Give that 300 ml to there. And then while that is quietly collapsing into a heap of its own juices, stage, which is going to be the chilies.
I can stir that for you.
Now, one of the reasons this is a good recipe is that it's kind of easily scalable depending on how hot you like things. I don't know about you, I'm not a fan of really hot food. I like spices because I like the flavours, but frankly I like to be able to taste the flavours, and I find that with really hot food all I get is a burning sensation, and that's all. I can't taste anything else. When you're using fresh chilies, you can choose how much chili you want to put in, and therefore how hot it is. Chilies tend to be hotter the thinner they are. So, I mean, these are quite robust, quite thick chilies. They're not going to be that hot. So with the chilies, you just slice straight down the middle, and that opens up. I don't know if you can see that. You've got all the seeds in the middle and the membrane. That's the hottest part of the chili. So we're going to cut that out, just very simply. You just follow the curve of the chili with your knife, and that will take the whole thing out. Break it off. I'll do the same here. I mean, you could, I suppose, if you're that way inclined for even more heat, you could leave the membrane and the seeds in. I wouldn't personally. A, for the heat, and B, for aesthetic and texture reasons. I think you'd be better off, if you want more heat, adding another chilli rather than leaving the other bits in, but it's entirely up to you. The other thing I will say about working with chilies, and this is kind of a warning that's passed down from cook to cook, and it's well worth listening to. And if you don't listen, you'll only make the mistake once, trust me. But if you've ever cooked with chilies, you'll know, no matter how hard you wash your hands, you can still taste them for a couple of days. The oils in the chili, I think it's the oils in the chilies, get into the skin, and they can be quite difficult to remove. I think that's because they are not water soluble. So you can wash your hands, and some of it will come off, but you won't get it all. And that's why, because I think they're alcohol soluble, that's why I think you're far better off having a pint of lager if you've got a hot curry than a pint of water. No, that's not the helpful hint. The helpful hint is, when you're cooking the chilies, be very, very careful what you do, and remember to wash your hands. Because if you rub your eyes, or you change your contact lenses, or God forbid you go to the toilet without washing your hands.
If you're a bloke.
If you're a bloke, it's a mistake you only make once. So no, seriously, just be very careful. If you get chili oil in your eyes, or they're working with chilies, and you stick your finger in your eye to rub your eye, you will know about it. And you won't be cooking very much for a little while because you won't be able to see.
Got any useful hints on what to do if you get chili oil in your eyes?
Yeah, get someone else to do the cooking.
Okay.
That's a useful hint generally, but I'm not. No, I don't know. It's not like getting anything really bad in your eyes. It just stings, and it will hurt, and you won't be able to see anything for a while because your eyes will be watering too hard. But I think the eyes will clean themselves. Get it anywhere else? Thankfully, I've never done that. I know of people who have. I don't know what you do. Sit in a pint of beer, maybe.
Prosecco bar.
Yeah, you could try that. So the general rule with chilies: keep your hands away from your eyes and wash them well when you're using the chilies.
With soap.
With soap, yeah. Unless you've got a spare
Or
bottle of champagne.
alcohol gel, maybe it might work. Because everyone seems to have a lot of alcohol
hand
gel.
sanitizers might do a better job than the water. I don't know.
Have to try it. Give it a go.
Okay, I am lucky enough to have a food processor at hand, which makes this quite an easy job. Makes it quick, makes it easy. It's by no means essential. If all you've got is a large bowl and a whisk, that will do the job just as well.
You've done the worst bit, cut
The
up
only
the
thing
chilies.
is, if you haven't got a food processor, so it's not going to be adding any more cutting, you might want to make sure things are cut up really nice and finely. So I'm just going to add the ingredients there as I prepare them and as we go along, and then whisk it all up at the end. So I'll put the chilies in there. The garlic cloves. Again, garlic is a movable feast. You can add as much as you like. And the recipe calls for 3 to 4 cloves, depending on the size of them. I've got a couple of small ones here, so we're going to be putting 4 in. And because I like garlic, I don't think you can have too much garlic. So we'll add the garlic. The other thing is with this recipe, I think the original grilled the chicken. Now that's arguably a nicer way of doing it. It gives it a kind of a slightly smoky char grilled flavour. It gets the skin nicely in the marinade. If you've got the time and the inclination, I'd advise it. It's a nice way of doing it. The only problem with that is it's slightly more difficult to judge the cooking of chicken thighs under a grill so that they're cooked all the way through and not burnt. Especially with the marinade, we don't really want to be turning them over. So if you wanted to grill them, which of course you can do, I would advise doing it on a low grill for about 20 minutes at least to start with, until they're starting to look cooked. Again, use the instruction in the recipe for how they're cooked. If you've got a meat thermometer, great. You obviously have the instructions for that. You know the temperature. You're looking for something around about 80 to 85 at the thickest part by the bone. Otherwise, stick skewer in the blade of a knife. If the juices run clear, that
Garlic crushes over there.
is a, I think, good indication that the chicken is cooked. So just grill it very gently, slowly on a kind of low to medium setting, and then turn it up at the end to get that kind of char grilled, slightly burnt look. Just add garlic in there. done. Chilies are in, so then we want a couple of teaspoons of ground ginger. You didn't know that, do you? You're going to use a half spoon.
I know. It doesn't fit in the thingy, does
No,
it?
it doesn't. 1, 2, 3. Of course, there's 2 teaspoons of ground ginger. 15 ml of soy sauce is basically a tablespoon. You don't really have to be 100% accurate. If I was just doing this for myself, or for the family, I'd probably do that by hand. But as I'm telling you to use 15 ml, well, I better do it myself, really. We've got zest and juice of 2 limes. So juice, I'm just going to juice quick and easy way. If you've got a juicer thingy, you can use that if it's easier. And I'm looking slightly cack-handed doing this because I can't use that hand because I skinned my middle finger. Chopping up some wood today, and I suspect lime juice into that, I'd know all about it. So we won't try that. So where are we? I need to zest these, don't I? That's one of the jobs I do find people a pain in the kitchen. Zesting lemons and limes.
They don't sell those in packets either, do they? Like in
Pre-zested.
Like in Marks and Spencer's.
Not yet, and I expect it would be hideously expensive if they did. I think to pay somebody to stand here and zest.
Get the joy on that face.
And inevitably, whenever you're doing this, at some point, you end up skinning your knuckles.
You've just done it.
Yes, of course I have. Happens every time. But it's alright, I don't think I've got salmonella. It's not now. Time consuming, fiddly, dangerous. A bit like marriage, really.
Excuse me. Can edit that bit out.
As you do. This is the witty badinage.
To be honest, I would if I could, but I'm not sure I know how.
This also leaves a big blank spot in the commentary where I should be filling it with something. But I did Vic Reeves last time, so I can't really do that.
This is where I should have pre-zested your limes as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Can't get the help anymore.
I can't really put this down either because we won't get the right height.
I did, however, last night we were watching, what was it we were watching? Hustle, an old episode of Hustle. And...
Here we go.
What's his name? What's the actor's name? No, I probably shouldn't stop one, I think. What's the actor's name that plays...
Ash?
No. It's not Ronald Weasley either, is it? It's his father. What's his father? I can't remember anybody's name. What's his father called? Weasley. Arthur Weasley.
Arthur Weasley.
The actor that plays Arthur Weasley. Whose name I can't remember. But who I recall in my youth was in The Fast Show. turned up in Hustle as a
Mark.
bit of a dodgy ex-celebrity game show host. And my daughter was quite amazed because she'd never seen the actor doing anything other than Mr. Weasley. Kind of just took me back. Now I'm rambling now, I know that, but I've got time to fill, so you'll have to put up with it. But yeah, and I thought that, because I remember him kind of when they were first coming on the scene, and they came to public attention in the Fast Show. I don't remember who remembers the Fast Show. It was Jesse's Diets, wasn't it? This week
yeah.
I'm mostly eating lime zest.
I like the one when he said, this week I'll mostly be wearing Dolce & Gabbana.
So yeah, something and nothing there, but I did offer to play her an episode of the Fast Show, but I didn't think she wanted her kind of mental images of Arthur Weasley ruined by strange.
I think they were after the character he
Westerner.
played there in Hustle, to be honest.
Oh yeah, it was a bit awful. But very apropos the time
Yeah.
and the old game shows. That'll do. That will do, I think. I've just skinned my knuckle for a second time. It's enough pain. Just for some lime zest.
Hopefully it's all
so
in the grater.
unrewarding. All that effort.
Hopefully it's all in the grater.
And it barely looks like you've got anything at all out of it.
It'll come out in the flavour. That's the thing with zest.
It does. It makes a big difference. Otherwise, I would find a way to cut it out. But you do need it in there. This is why we go through these agonies. That'll do it. Let's give it the last there. There we go. Taste and zest of 2 limes. I'm just grateful it's not more.
I'm going to come and have a close-up look of your food processor.
Food processor.
Okay.
Very simple, very straightforward food processor.
So there is quite a lot of the zest there, look. That's all zest on the top of the blade. So it's worth it. Okay.
Right, next bit, on to glass of sugar, 30 grams, which again is roughly 2 tablespoons. That's close enough for us, unless you really want to measure it out, but you need to. 2 tablespoons will do it. 1, 2, coriander. I suppose whilst we're just doing this last little bit, we'll put on a pan of water for the rice. Get a good big pan for this. Can't stress that enough. I will explain why in a bit. I'll give you an exposition of the art of cooking rice. But the way I'm going to suggest you do it uses a lot of water. So, rice, salt. No, not rice, water, salt. No rice in sight yet. There we go. And we will just leave that come up to boiling. So, on to the coriander. Helpfully, my assistant has already taken the leaves off the stalks. You could, of course, throw the stalks in as well, if you wished. I'm going to reserve a few leaves just for presentation. Yeah, you could put in the stalks as well. They'll add to the flavour, but they can be a bit tough. So we tend to strip the leaves off. It just makes a nicer sauce. You don't end up with chunks of woody stalk in there. And again, if you are using, or not using a food processor, but you're using a whisk in a bowl on this one, probably want to cut this up quite finely. And I don't know, there may be somebody out there who hasn't chopped fresh herbs before. The way I do it is, as always, you've got to have a nice sharp knife. You just hold the tip of the knife with the flat of your hand, keeping your fingers well out of the way, and then you just rock it all the way up a couple of times and gather the herbs so that you can get to the bits that haven't been cut. Just keep doing that, basically, until it's all quite finely chopped, or chopped however fine you wish. You might like coriander leaves, I don't know. But if you're doing it, keep your hand on top so your fingers are well out of the way of the blade. And that'll do it for now. So we pop that in with the rest of the sauce ingredients. Go. Personally, I have to say I always try and clean down as I go because I can't stand working in a messy kitchen. It drives me nuts. Right, so I think that's everything we need in there.
No,
Is it not? Oh no, coconut milk, forgot that. Thank you. That's all dissolved now. You can see that's kind of basically like milk. Quite thick. So we'll add that in. And then we will whiz it all up to a nice sauce. I'm obviously not going to talk over this bit because there wouldn't be a great deal of point, you won't hear me. In all honesty with this one, if you've chopped your ingredients well, it really doesn't need very long in the food processor, or in terms of whisking either, really. So if you were being a little more sophisticated about this and you had more time in your hands, this is the stage at which you take the chicken, slash your skin, and then you would just put it in a bowl, or even a baking tray, whatever you've got, that would allow this liquid to kind of cover the chicken. Pour that over it, cling film it, stick it in the fridge, leave it overnight or for 5 or 6 hours, however long you have available.
I think the original recipe only actually says half an hour, but obviously the longer you leave it, the better.
Well, frankly, I think if you marinate it for half an hour, there's not a lot of point. It ain't going to make an awful lot of difference marinating for 30 minutes, in my humble view. So pop that in a saucepan, because we're doing the rough and ready quick version today. And then what we're going to do is just put that on a lowish simmer on the hob to warm it through, and it will also, well, if I put that one on right, it'll also start to thicken. Just keep half an eye on it, because it will stick and it will burn at the bottom of the pan if it gets too hot. And that's basically it, really, so far. Just need to cook some rice. Let the chicken cook, Let sauce thicken. Which means we are about 8 minutes away from having a finished meal. Very quick, very simple. So, rice. We'll move on to the rice. We're quite generous with our rice. So I normally allow about 65 to 70 grams per person for rice. You may want to reduce that or increase it, as is your want, depending on how much you eat. For these purposes, I'm going to do 70 per person. Because I'm hungry. Rice. There are 47. There seem to be about as many different ways to cook rice as there are cooks. It's bound up in mystery and enigma and mystical arts.
Stop punching around, I keep trying to catch.
And it seems to be one of those things which people struggle with. And so chefs always share what their wonderful way of cooking rice is to make it super easy and to have, the perfect method for cooking rice never goes wrong. And then you try it and you end up with a sticky ball of mush. Maybe that's just me. But I'm going to say that my method is foolproof. I'm not going to say it's the best. It's just one that I've found works for me. By all means, experiment, try the others. As I said, there are so many different variants on the theme of that. Oh, we've got a bit of pasta lurking in there. Who did the washing up?
I think the dishwasher did that. Sorry, here you go.
We'll take that out.
Sorry.
Cook though.
Good.
Nearly there. So my way of cooking rice, as my go-to rice is basmati because I like it. It's easy to cook. It's slightly lighter than ordinary long grain rice, and it's got a nicer flavour. It's not to say it's suited for everything. If you're doing a risotto or you're making sushi or something like that, then obviously there are specialist rices you use for that. You wouldn't use basmati. But for most other things, as a general go-to rice, I use basmati. So I get a big pot of water, I fill it with water, I add salt. I bring it to a simmer, like so. And then I'm going to add my basmati to that, treating it gently. Like an old friend. Excuse me, can I get a fork?
Sorry.
Because basmati is quite a delicate rice, and if you're not gentle with it, and you're not kind to it, and you don't treat it with respect, you'll get a load of starch in your water, and if you get a load of starch in your water, you'll get sticky rice, and nobody likes sticky rice unless it's in sushi. That's what makes rice, as I understand it, I'm willing to be contradicted, but that's my understanding, is that that's what makes rice sticky, is when you get too much starch released and that gets into the water. So now I'm just going to turn this down to a gentle simmer because I don't want my basmati thrown around by the roiling tides of a pan of boiling water. So just bring that down to a gentle simmer. One on for about 7 or 8 minutes. And as you can see with the sauce here, you look around the edges, it's starting to thicken as it simmers gently. It comes up to heat. Just starting to thicken. It smells lovely. You can smell that lime zest.
Yeah. Well worth it, that.
Oh, absolutely.
These gravy knuckles.
But as I was saying, with rice, you may have come across all sorts of other methods of doing it. I've tried various methods going back over the years. One method I came across was to fry the rice in a little oil for a few seconds to start with, so it was coated in oil, then you add your water. Other methods call for you to add only a very specific amount of rice and a very specific amount of water, so that by the end of it you've got virtually no liquid left in it. Other methods require you to turn it off, or turn the heat off, about halfway through the cooking and put a tea towel over it, and there's all sorts of weird and wonderful ways of trying to cook rice. And the honest answer is I've never found a way that cooks it any better than this, and this is just the simplest way of doing it. So this is what I work with, this is what I stick with. Having said that, I do on occasions if I'm cooking rice for other things. I wouldn't with this because the sauce has got all the flavour you need. But if I wanted a flavoured rice, then I might start with a little oil, add some spices to that, some cinnamon, cardamom, whatever you fancy, fry those off for a minute or so. Then add your rice, give that a good stir in so you get that all mixed in, and then add your hot water to that and simmer it gently for 7 minutes or so. That's quite nice. Gives your rice a bit of a flavour to it. But really, with basmati, it's just about treating it gently. Don't have it on a massive boil. Don't stick a great big wooden spoon in there and keep yanking it round the pan every 2 seconds. Because you will break up the grains and that releases the starch, and starch is sticky. So really, it's very simple, it's very straightforward. There's not a lot of work to it. As you can tell by the amount of filling I'm having to do. Whistling on and on. So that chicken's had 35 minutes in the oven now. The sauce is ready. Literally, the only thing we need to wait on is the rice, which will be another couple of minutes. What we will do in a second, get the chicken out. I'll just show those of you that aren't sure how to make sure it's cooked.
Whoosh.
It should be cooked maybe a little bit longer. First indication is how it looks. You can usually see when the chicken isn't cooked. I mean, this is crispened up on the outside. It's looking good. If you look down, I don't know if you can see, but if you look where we scored the skin, can you see those juices are largely running clear? There's no blood in those juices. Always pick the fastest one because the fastest one will take the longest time to cook. So that's probably a pretty good candidate. Get in near the bone, give it a good stab. Right, you see those juices are all clear. There's no blood in those. That's good. And if you happen to have a meat thermometer, which I do, and which is brilliant, so mainly used for cooking things low and slow. But just to prove the point, 72.
It's going down.
It's going down. Why is it going down?
That's only 7.
That's it. No, I think I've pushed the probe through the outside, the other side of the chicken.
Oh.
So it's well over 80, which means it's cooked. That's fine. So that's there. Your sauce is there, sticking up a bit. If it doesn't start to thicken, turn the heat up, boil it a little bit more enthusiastically, energetically, and it should thicken up. And again, that's really to whatever consistency takes your fancy. If you like it quite runny and loads of sauce, and don't thicken it too much. If you like quite a thick sauce with it, and thicken it up a bit more. Excuse my arm. That to me is about the right consistency for us. So we'll go with that. And then I'm going to check the rice. See where we've got to with that. Just running my fork around gently to make sure the grains aren't stuck to the bottom of the pan. As I say, being very gentle with it.
Oh, that's a horrible sound. Never stand chalkboard.
To me, that rice is still a little bit hard as you bite into it. Still a little bit chalky, it's not fluffy. So I'm going to give it another minute or two. So when I say 7 minutes in the instructions, that may be a little bit ambitious, especially if you're being gentle with the rice and you've only got it on a very low simmer. So you may find you want to give it a little bit longer. But I think that still means, even with another 2 minutes, that we should still come in within 40 minutes.
42, but that was your introduction.
Give or take. And if you'd zested me limes, we'd have been done in half the time.
Well, yeah. I'm hungry. So tempting just to pick that skin off.
That's the other point I ought to mention. If you are cooking in the kitchen and you are chefing, you get all the perks. So you get to take the best bits of crackling, and you get to pick the little bits of skin off there, and you get to take the little end bits off the joint, because that's the rules.
That's why he likes cooking, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Chef's perks, always. Right, let's have another 140, so we'll just try it again. Perfect. Yep, that's it. So just strain it off in a sieve. And then, you want to look it up in that one? Because I've just washed it off. Yeah. And just fluff the rice up a little bit from the bottom, help the steam escape. Another little tip helps it stop it overcooking or going sticky. Okay, and you can see from there that the grains are nicely separated. They kind of fall apart at the moment. They're not sticking together.
Well worth buying good quality basmati rice as well, doesn't it? Definitely. If you can afford it. Yeah.
But even the kind of, well, I mean, Aldi's basmati's rice is pretty good. Sainsbury's own Aldi basmati rice isn't bad. And they're not expensive. So there we go. All we're going to do now is plate it up. So, rice. You can do with rice if you felt a bit kind of, I don't know, keep that one to myself.
Oh, such a tease. Is that for next time?
Yeah, could be. Could be. I'm going to suggest something, but I may just use it next time and actually just demonstrate it instead of suggesting it. There you go. Let's make a little bit of a well in the centre there. Then we're going to put our chicken. Okay. There you go. So, a couple of bits of chicken. Let's use my fingers. So. I'm just going to spoon over a little bit of the sauce. There's actually quite a lot of the sauce because I love this sauce. It's never going to be the most elegant looking dish in the world, but 45 minutes start to finish and it tastes great, so who's going to argue with that? There you go. And if you felt like making it a little bit fancy, you can always just put a little bit of coriander on the top.
Yum yum.
I'm sure if that actually makes it look any better or not, but there you go. It looks green if nothing else. So there you go. Sorry I didn't join you on Friday. I hope if nothing else that's shown you what I was talking about in the recipes, maybe added a few tips, a few useful bits and pieces. I hope you do try it. I hope you experiment with it. If you don't like it hot, start with one chilli, make that up, try it, see where you get to, and if you like it but you thought, well, it could have been hotter, next time add 2 chilies. Thanks very much.